You ever see someone so drunk on power they start policing oxygen? Welcome to Pine Crest Gardens, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns are symmetrical, the gossip flows faster than Wi Fi, and one woman rules with the enthusiasm of a small town dictator and designer heels. This isn't your average HOA drama. No, this one's a full-blown suburban thriller, complete with stolen medical equipment, hidden identities, and one mom who turned a barbecue into a federal sting operation. But let's rewind. Before the flashing lights, the badges, and the collective neighborhood gasping like a live episode of Dateline Driveway Edition, it started with a knock. A simple knock. The kind that sounds polite on the outside, but feels like a prelude to a fine. It was our first night in Pinecrest Gardens. Pizza boxes still open, the smell of cardboard and melted cheese in the air. My mom, Catherine Reynolds, was all smiles, happy to finally settle down after a lifetime of teaching kindergarten and dealing with toddlers who couldn't share crayons. She thought retirement meant peace. She thought this neighborhood would be calm. Enter Eleanor Hoffman, president of the HOA, defender of community standards, destroyer of joy. And she wasn't knocking to welcome us with cookies. Oh no, she came armed with a clipboard and the confidence of someone who's been waiting her whole life to write someone up for mailbox misconduct.
It was 7:46 p.m. when Eleanor appeared on our porch, framed by the golden glow of our porch light. White pantsuit so spotless it looked photoshopped in real life. She didn't smile, didn't blink much either. Her hair didn't move, and her expression said, "I find your happiness suspicious." "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, in a tone that made it sound like a threat. "You'll find your HOA handbook inside your welcome packet. Please note that your mailbox is 2 shades darker than the approved regulation color." I blinked. My mom, ever the diplomat, offered her a slice of pizza. "Oh, we'll fix that. You're welcome to join us if you'd like." Eleanor's nose wrinkled, like pepperoni was contraband. "I prefer to keep our interactions professional," she said, tapping her pen. "This community values order." And just like that, boom. First impression, weaponized. Mom smiled politely, but I could see her jaw tighten. She wasn't used to people treating her like a problem to be solved. That night, she laughed it off, said it was just new neighbor awkwardness. But Eleanor, she didn't do awkward. She did surveillance. The next morning, we found our first violation notice taped to the door. Non-compliant mailbox finish. Correct by Friday. 2 days later, another note. Trash cans visible from curb. Unacceptable. Then came holiday decorations exceeding allowed display period. It was January 2nd. The lights were literally still warm. Mom tried to be nice. She baked cookies, offered to volunteer at the next community meeting, even complimented Eleanor's garden, which, for the record, looked like it had been curated by a landscaping cult. But politeness bounced right off Eleanor like tennis balls off a brick wall. 3 months later, our once friendly home had turned into a target. Eleanor patrolled like a hawk with a clipboard. She'd appear at random times, snapping photos, jotting notes, muttering HOA codes like incantations. And every time, Mom would sigh, take a deep breath, and try to be diplomatic. Until one day, I caught her staring out the window at Eleanor's car idling in front of our driveway. "She's watching the gnome again," Mom whispered. "The what?" I asked. "Our garden gnome. She says it's aesthetic pollution." Now, let's pause. This wasn't just any gnome. This was Raymond, a fishing gnome Dad had given her before he passed away. A tiny, smiling piece of memory sitting peacefully on our lawn. Until Eleanor decided it was lowering community value. That's when my mom's patience started to crumble. She'd spent decades teaching kids to play nice, and here was a grown woman throwing a tantrum over decorative pottery. Still, Mom held her ground, politely. She quoted the bylaws, baked another batch of cookies, and tried to keep peace. But Eleanor, she didn't want peace. She wanted obedience. That knock on our door wasn't just a greeting. It was the first shot in a Cold War fought with fines, forms, and faux concern. And if you think a color-coded mailbox feud sounds ridiculous, just wait. Because this little neighborhood drama was about to escalate from petty power plays to full-blown criminal investigation.
Let's get one thing straight. My mom is not a rule breaker. She's the kind of person who alphabetizes the spice rack and irons pillowcases. If you asked her favorite crime, she'd probably say, jaywalking, if I'm feeling rebellious. So when she found herself labeled a repeat HOA offender, it wasn't because she was defiant. It was because Eleanor Hoffman, the walking manifestation of neighborhood control issues, had made it her personal mission to convert our property into a dictatorship of manicured conformity. And the spark that ignited the full-blown war? A 12-inch ceramic gnome, Raymond. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't offensive. He just fished. But apparently, his tiny fishing rod cheapened the aesthetic of Pine Crest Gardens. That's right. Eleanor had declared war on a statue the size of a lunchbox. Now, you'd think an HOA president has better things to do than stalk retirees over garden decor, but no. Eleanor had the energy of someone who powered her coffee maker with rage. She marched right up to our door one afternoon, clipboard in hand as always, and said, "Mrs. Reynolds, the board has deemed your gnome to be an unauthorized ornament. Please remove it immediately." Mom smiled sweetly, too sweetly. Actually, the bylaws state that tasteful garden decorations are permitted, she said, flipping open her copy of the HOA handbook like it was a legal weapon. Page 12, paragraph 3. Raymond stays. Eleanor blinked, momentarily stunned that anyone dared challenge her paper crown. Then she smirked. "We'll see what the board says about your attitude, Mrs. Reynolds." That line, your attitude, would go down in Pinecrest Garden history as the HOA equivalent of, "May God have mercy on your soul." Because from that moment, Eleanor turned our lives into a bureaucratic siege. Every morning brought a new violation letter. Our rose bushes, half an inch too tall. Our trash can, seen by a passing car. The bird feeder, attracting pests. You mean birds. Eleanor even left a warning because my car leaked a drop of oil. One drop. It was harassment wrapped in policy, tyranny disguised as neighborhood improvement. And the wild part? Mom still tried to make peace. She brought Eleanor cookies, fresh ones, the kind that could end wars. She offered to help with HOA events. She even volunteered for the landscaping committee. Eleanor responded by doubling the number of inspections. This wasn't a community anymore. It was a surveillance state with better lawns. But then came the annual Pine Crest Gardens Summer Barbecue, an event where everyone pretends to like each other while secretly judging whose potato salad came from a store. Mom wanted to skip it. She said, "Let's just stay home." But I told her, "No, Mom, we can't let Eleanor think we've scared her off." Famous last words. The moment we arrived, I felt the tension. People glanced at us, then looked away. Something was off. Eleanor was at the microphone, standing proudly like she was about to announce the Hunger Games. "Glad you could join us," she said, voice dripping with passive-aggressive honey. "We were just discussing how certain residents seem determined to lower property values." And then she clicked to a PowerPoint slide. On the screen, our house, our garden, Raymond the gnome, circled in angry red like a wanted criminal. "This," she announced, "is exactly the kind of tackiness that drives away quality buyers." I swear, even the potato salad cringed. Mom stood up, calm, composed. "Eleanor, this isn't appropriate for a community event." But Eleanor wasn't there to talk. She was there to humiliate. "Your attitude, Mrs. Reynolds, has been noted repeatedly." I saw Mom's hand tremble slightly. The stress was getting to her. Her asthma, which had been mild for years, was flaring up. Her voice caught. "That gnome? was a gift from my late husband." The room fell silent. And then Eleanor, hurt colder than an HOA fine notice, said, "Your personal attachments aren't our concern. Remove it or face penalties." Mom's breathing grew shallow. She reached into her purse for her inhaler. Eleanor stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You're exceeding your authority," Mom said, wheezing. And that's when Eleanor did the unthinkable. She snatched the inhaler straight out of my mom's hand. Gasps filled the room. Eleanor sneered, "You'll get this back when you learn some manners." I jumped to my feet. "She needs that to breathe." Eleanor's reply, "She needs to respect authority." Mom's lips went pale. She collapsed. The room erupted into chaos. I shoved past Eleanor's bodyguards because, yes, this woman had board member bodyguards, and caught Mom just before she hit the floor. "Call 911!" I screamed. And as the ambulance lights flashed outside, Eleanor stood there, arms crossed, self-righteous as ever, watching paramedics carry Mom away. All over a garden gnome and an attitude problem. But Eleanor didn't just take an inhaler that day. She took federal property without knowing it. Because that little puffer she pocketed, it wasn't just medicine. It was evidence.
You know that quiet moment after chaos when everyone's pretending things are fine, but the air feels like it's holding its breath? That was the ride to the hospital. Sirens wailing, lights flashing off the windshield, and me clutching Mom's hand while trying to process the fact that our neighborhood barbecue had just turned into a crime scene. The paramedics were calm, too calm, like this was just another Tuesday in suburbia's most unhinged HOA. Mom was breathing again, thanks to their backup inhaler, but the look in her eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was focus, like she just remembered something important. At the hospital, a doctor named Patel explained everything in that soft, professional tone they use right before dropping life-changing news. She suffered a severe asthma attack, he said. "You got her here just in time." Just in time. The words echoed like a countdown. Mom stabilized overnight, and I spent those hours pacing her room, furious, not just at Eleanor, but at everyone who stood by, every neighbor who'd watched it happen and said nothing. I was ready to call the police first thing in the morning. Assault, theft, heck, emotional terrorism if that's a thing. But when I told Mom my plan, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "No police, not yet." "Mom," I said, voice cracking, "that woman nearly killed you." She leaned forward, removing her oxygen mask like she was about to drop classified intel. "Get my secure phone, the one in my nightstand drawer." "Your what now?" "Just do it," she said, calm but firm. And that's when I realized she wasn't rattled. She was activated. So I drove home in a storm, rain hammering the windshield, headlights slicing through sheets of water. When I got there, the house looked wrong, too quiet, too still. And taped to the front door, soaked in rain, was an envelope stamped with the HOA seal. A violation letter, of course. Inside, fine for disruptive behavior at community event, $500 due within 7 days. Signed, Eleanor Holfman, HOA president. Even the weather seemed to mock me as thunder rolled overhead. I muttered, "Unbelievable," tossing the letter on the counter. Then I went to her nightstand, found the key taped inside her old copy of Pride and Prejudice, because apparently Mom hides secrets in Austen novels, and unlocked the drawer. Inside, a small, locked phone and a notebook full of coded numbers and financial records. When I returned to the hospital, she was sitting up, alert, and waiting. She said, "Lock the door." "Mom, what's going on?" She took the phone, entered a long passcode, and made a call. Her voice changed, sharper, cooler, and with authority that didn't sound like any kindergarten teacher I had ever met. "This is Agent Catherine Reynolds reporting. Authorization code Lima Delta 47. I need to speak with Director Swanson." "Yes, it's urgent." I froze. My brain short-circuited. Agent? Authorization code? Director who? When she hung up, I finally found my voice. "Agent? Mom, what are you talking about?" She exhaled slowly. "Honey, I'm not just a retired teacher. I've been with the FBI for 35 years. Financial Crimes Division.
I laughed because what else do you do when your mom suddenly claims to be a federal agent mid-hospital stay? She didn't laugh back. She reached into her gown and pulled out a badge on a chain. Real metal, real authority. And just like that, my entire childhood rewrote itself. Eleanor Hoffman has been running a money laundering operation through the HOA. I've been undercover for months, tracking her transactions. That's why we moved here after your father passed. I blinked. Dad knew? She said softly. He was my handler until he retired. The pieces slammed into place like puzzle snaps. The moves every few years, the district transfers, the teacher conferences, all cover stories. And that inhaler Eleanor stole, not just a medical device, it was a specialized recorder disguised as an asthma puffer. It's been capturing her private meetings, calls, and financial deals. She just committed a federal offense by taking it. I stared at her like I was meeting her for the first time. So, what happens now? Before she could answer, there was a knock on the door. A tall woman and a younger man entered, flashing badges. "Agents Clark and Rodriguez," the woman said quietly. "We need to speak with Agent Reynolds." Mom straightened, instantly professional. "Director Swanson authorized immediate action. We'll execute tomorrow. Eleanor called an emergency board meeting." Perfect cover. Mom nodded. "She'll move the money after that meeting. We'll have everything we need." Then she turned to me. "You're going to attend, act normal, and record everything. Understand?" I nodded, still reeling. My kindergarten teacher was now giving mission briefings. "Don't worry," she said with a small smile. "Dr. Patel is actually Agent Patel. I'll be discharged in the morning." I just stared. "You had a backup agent as your doctor?" She winked. "You think I trust an HMO with my cover?" And just like that, the tables turned. The HOA queen thought she was running a neighborhood, but she'd actually been starring in an undercover sting.
When I woke up the next morning, it felt like living in a spy movie directed by a PTA mom. My mom, my cardigan-wearing, cookie-baking, retired teacher mom, was now Agent Reynolds, FBI. And somewhere in her confiscated purse, Eleanor Hoffman was sitting on federal evidence disguised as asthma relief. The neighborhood looked deceptively calm. Lawns freshly mowed, sprinklers ticking in perfect rhythm, and somewhere, I swear, I could smell Eleanor's perfume, the stench of smug authority. By noon, I drove Mom home to get ready for the meeting. 3 black SUVs sat discreetly down the block, looking as out of place as a Metallica concert at a bake sale. When we walked inside, Mom moved with purpose. No hesitation, no weakness. It was eerie, like watching someone flip a switch and become someone else entirely. "Hand me my go bag," she said. "Mom, since when do you have a go bag?" "Since Reagan," she replied without missing a beat. Inside it, 2 burner phones, a small pistol, a flash drive labeled HOA Ledger, and a granola bar. Classic FBI efficiency. Evidence, defense, and snacks. "Okay," I said. "So what's the plan?" She turned to me, deadly serious. "We're bringing down a criminal enterprise that's been using homeowners associations as shell networks for laundering money. Eleanor thinks she's just being audited by a power-hungry neighbor. She doesn't realize she's sitting on a wiretap, a tracking chip, and about 12 federal felonies." I blanked. "So like Raymond the Gnome level overkill?" "Exactly. Only this time, the gnome bites back." While she prepped files and gear, I read through her notebook. It was filled with shorthand, coded initials, and dates that lined up with HOA fee collections. Every quarter, huge transfers went to landscaping companies that didn't exist. Fake contractors, fake maintenance costs, real money. Millions. That's when I realized how deep this went. Eleanor wasn't just the neighborhood tyrant. She was a puppet of something much bigger. Mom glanced at me. "You're pale. You okay?" "Yeah, just realizing my childhood lemonade stand had more integrity than our HOA." She almost smiled. "That's why we're here."
That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The mailbox fight, the gnome, the barbecue, the inhaler snatch. How many times had I rolled my eyes at her over-prepared habits, her tendency to notice everything? Turns out, she wasn't just observant. She was surveilling. At dawn, her phone buzzed. Operation Active, the text read. We were live. At the meeting hall, Eleanor was already setting up her laptop and decorative centerpiece, because of course she needed floral arrangements to frame her corruption. When Mom entered, leaning on her cane, feigning fragility, the room froze. Eleanor smirked. Ah, Mrs. Reynolds. Back from the hospital, I see. Feeling better? Much. Thank you for your concern. Her eyes, though, ice cold. I took a seat in the back, phone recording. My heart was thumping so hard it could have set off the building's motion sensors. Eleanor started her PowerPoint again. Violations of community standards. Because apparently near-death experiences didn't teach her humility. Slide 1, our mailbox. Slide 2, our illegal bird feeder. Slide 3, Raymond the gnome like he was the Zodiac killer. And sitting proudly on the table in front of Eleanor was Mom's inhaler. She actually displayed it like a trophy. Then Mom stood, slowly, deliberately. Before you continue, she said, voice trembling just enough to sell the act, I'd like my property back. Eleanor smirked. This? You mean the disruptive prop you brought to the last meeting? A ripple of discomfort spread through the room. Even Eleanor's allies shifted uneasily. Mom took a deep breath, then dropped the frail act like a bad costume. I'm afraid that's federal property, Mrs. Hoffman. Gasps. Phones came out. Someone actually whispered, Is this a prank? Then Mom pulled the badge. Special Agent Catherine Reynolds, FBI. For a split second, the entire room froze, like someone hit pause on reality. Then chaos erupted. Eleanor's smugness evaporated faster than HOA funds in a Cayman Island. You're lying, she shrieked. You can't record me without permission. Mom stayed calm. Actually, I can. You see that inhaler you stole? It's a recording device. It's been capturing your meetings, your calls, and your not-so-subtle embezzlement of community funds. The color drained from Eleanor's face. Agent Clark entered from the back, flashing his badge. We've been monitoring this HOA for months. You just provided enough evidence to wrap it up with a bow. I swear, I saw the moment Eleanor's soul left her body. But oh, you think that's the end? No. That was just Act 1 of Eleanor's downfall. Because when the FBI dug deeper, they found something buried beneath Pine Crest Gardens. Literally.
If you thought Eleanor's arrest ended the chaos, oh no. This HOA saga had more layers than her fake landscaping invoices. Because, as it turns out, the real dirt on Pine Crest Gardens wasn't on the lawns. It was under them. The FBI sealed off the clubhouse that same night. Floodlights, caution tape, black SUVs lining the cul-de-sac. It looked less like a neighborhood meeting and more like a CSI Suburbia crossover episode. Eleanor sat handcuffed in the back of a squad car, still shouting about unlawful seizures and her senator friend. Meanwhile, Mom, now fully back in Agent Reynolds mode, was coordinating with agents, flipping through files, issuing commands like she'd never been retired at all. That's when one of the tech agents called out, "Ma'am, we've got something in the basement." Basement. The community center didn't have a basement, at least not one listed on any blueprints. Mom's eyes narrowed. Show me. So down we went, me, Mom, and 2 agents with flashlights, descending a set of narrow concrete stairs behind a false wall that had been disguised as a utility closet. The air grew colder, heavier. The smell of damp paper and dust mixed with something faintly chemical, like printer toner and guilt. At the bottom, the beam of a flashlight swept across rows of metal shelving, boxes, filing cabinets, broken pool furniture, and then something far weirder, an entire hidden office setup. Computers humming, printers still warm, stacks of passports and IDs, all fake. Some with photos of our actual neighbors, just with different names. Identity theft, Mom muttered, slipping on latex gloves. And much more. The agent next to her nodded grimly. We've got stolen data, fake credit histories, background reports. This is a full-blown identity factory. I blinked. Wait, they've been using our neighbors' information? Mom picked up a stack of forged driver's licenses and flipped through them. Not just using, selling. These are complete identities. Clean, believable, government-grade fabrications. They're creating people out of thin air using real resident data. I felt sick. So when Eleanor was taking pictures of people's homes, Mom gave a humorless laugh. She wasn't documenting violations, she was collecting photos for ID templates. It hit me like a ton of HOA-approved bricks. Every photo, every inspection, every so-called complaint, all just cover for a criminal operation, laundering money and selling identities under the guise of community management. Mom crouched beside one of the computers. "Agent Clark," she called. "Check the drives. I want full data extraction before sunrise." He nodded, already typing. "Ma'am, we've got digital ledgers going back 3 years. Payments traced to 7 shell companies, all tied to accounts offshore." 7? Mom repeated, her voice tight. "That's bigger than we thought." That's when another agent shouted from the far end of the room, "Director Swanson is going to want to see this." We followed the sound to a heavy steel cabinet pried open with a crowbar. Inside were neat stacks of binders labeled with HOA names from all over the state: Maple Ridge, Lakeview Estates, Fairmont Hills. Mom ran a finger along the labels. They're running the scam in multiple neighborhoods. "So Eleanor wasn't the ringleader," I said. Mom nodded slowly. "Just a regional manager." Agent Clark looked up from the computer. "Ma'am, there's correspondence here. Encrypted messages referencing deliveries, accounts, and something called Project Hearthstone." Mom frowned. "Get that decrypted now. This isn't local corruption anymore. This is organized crime." I watched as boxes of evidence were carried upstairs, one after another: flash drives, documents, fake passports. Outside, residents stood in stunned silence, watching the feds parade past their hydrangeas like it was trash collection day, but for felony evidence. Tasha, our neighbor, whispered, "So Eleanor was stealing our information." Mom gave a small nod, among other things. "But don't worry, she'll be talking soon." As if on cue, shouting erupted near the patrol car. Eleanor was trying to escape. Handcuffs half off, hair wild, she made it 2 steps before 2 officers pinned her back down. Her eyes met Mom's, burning with rage. "You'll regret this. They'll come for all of you. When they find out this operation is blown, you're all targets." Mom stepped forward, calm and unflinching. "Who's they, Eleanor? Give me names, and maybe we can help you." Eleanor just laughed, cold, broken. "You think I'm the boss? I'm nothing compared to them. There are 50 communities just like this one." 50. The agents exchanged uneasy looks. Mom's voice hardened. "Then we have a lot of work to do." And just like that, I realized this wasn't just one neighborhood scandal. It was the tip of a multi-state iceberg, a massive criminal syndicate hiding behind white fences, HOA newsletters, and fine print. But if you think an FBI sting and a secret identity lab in a basement was the end, oh no. Because when Eleanor's bosses found out she'd been caught, things got dangerous.
The neighborhood was no longer just quiet. It was too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels watched. By sunrise, the FBI had cleared the clubhouse, sealed the evidence, and taken Eleanor and her bored cronies into custody. But the threat she spat at Mom, "They'll come for you," echoed like a curse in the morning air. Because if there were 50 HOAs like this one, that meant 50 more Eleanor Hoffmans, and someone way higher up calling the shots. Back at the house, Mom was all business. Her tone wasn't the warm teacher's voice I grew up with. It was clipped, precise, tactical. "Pack a bag," she said, rifling through drawers like a pro. "No phones, no laptops, nothing with GPS." "Wait, we're leaving already?" She gave me that look. The kind that said, "I've been doing this longer than you've been alive." They know who I am now. The network will react fast. We need to be gone before they do. I stared at her, frozen. Gone where?
Secure location, she said, shoving clothes into a duffel. Director Swanson sending a team. Witness protection protocols, at least temporarily. It hit me then. We weren't just witnesses anymore. We were targets. Mom stopped packing for a moment, glancing at the photo of Dad on her dresser. She always said if this day came, we'd be ready. And suddenly I understood why she kept her passport updated, why she'd insisted on learning just enough Krav Maga, why she always checked hotel smoke detectors twice. She wasn't paranoid, she was trained. I followed her lead, grabbed essentials, shoved my laptop into a pillowcase, because apparently that's stealthy, and started to process the absurdity of it all. Yesterday we were fighting over a gnome. Today we were fugitives in a federal sting. Outside I noticed movement. Black SUVs still parked nearby, engines humming quietly, agents still watching. And I swear, for the first time ever, I was glad to see government surveillance outside my house. Mom hung up from another call. They've intercepted chatter, she said. Someone knows the Pine Crest operation's been exposed. Someone? I repeated. Like Eleanor's boss? She nodded. Exactly. And that means we're not safe here. The knock came 5 minutes later. A single, solid rap on the door. No hesitation. Mom drew her gun, moving to the peephole like she'd done it 1,000 times. Then she exhaled. It's Michaels. The door opened to reveal Agent Michaels. Tall, trench coat, the permanent expression of someone who's seen too many government secrets. We need to move, now. Communications confirm your identity's compromised. Extraction team's waiting. I looked at Mom. Extraction? Like spy movie extraction? She zipped the duffel. Welcome to Tuesday. We piled into an unmarked SUV and rolled out of Pine Crest Gardens, past the hydrangeas, past the mailboxes, past Raymond, the gnome, who watched stoically from our lawn like the ceramic guardian of suburbia's secrets. Mom held my hand as the neighborhood disappeared behind us. I'm sorry I had to lie all these years. I thought this assignment would be simple. Local corruption. Nothing more. Yeah, I said, staring at the rear window. Just another HOA drama. But even as I tried to joke, the weight of it all hit me. We weren't just leaving a home, we were leaving our lives. Hours later, we reached a safe house. Plain, windowless, somewhere out in the woods. The kind of place that looks like it's never heard of Wi-Fi or neighborly potlucks. Agent Clark was already there, briefing Director Swanson over video call. Sir, Clark's associates have gone dark. Financial activity spiked and 6 other HOAs within the last hour. Looks like they're liquidating. Mom crossed her arms. Then they know we have evidence. Director Swanson's voice crackled through the speaker. Catherine, I want you and your family under federal protection until we neutralize the network. Do not engage further. Mom nodded, but I could see that glint in her eye. The same glint she got before confronting Eleanor at the barbecue. The, you can't stop me, I'm already planning 5 moves ahead glint. After the call, she sat beside me on the couch. You doing okay? I'd define okay. Yesterday, my biggest worry was HOA fines. Today, I'm in hiding with the FBI. She smiled softly. You're handling it better than some rookie agents I've trained. That night, we neither slept much. Every creak of the safe house sounded like a threat. Every gust of wind felt like a signal. But through it all, Mom stayed calm, centered, like she'd been preparing for this her entire life. And maybe she had. But here's the thing about peace. It doesn't last long in an HOA war. Because just when we thought it was over, the story took one last explosive twist.
6 months. That's how long it took for life to stop feeling like witness protection and start feeling normal again. Or at least as normal as life gets after your mom exposes a multi-state criminal network run through homeowners associations. Pine Crest Gardens looked peaceful again. A little too peaceful, like the kind of quiet that comes after a tornado politely rearranges your life. When the FBI finally gave us the all clear, we drove back home in silence. The street looked the same. Trimmed lawns, pastel shutters, birds pretending they weren't traumatized by federal raids. But something was different. Everything was different. Our mailbox, once the most controversial shade of illegal beige, gleamed proudly in the sun. No more violation notices, no more watchful stares, no Eleanor. Mom parked in the driveway, stepped out, and took a long, steady breath. "We're home," she said, almost like she couldn't believe it. And there by the steps was Raymond, our infamous garden gnome. Still fishing, still smiling, only now someone had added a tiny homemade sign that read, "Neighborhood Hero." Tasha, our neighbor, jogged over. "Welcome back, Agent Reynolds," she said with a grin that could have lit up a city block. "Oh, sorry, Mrs. Reynolds. Old habits." Mom laughed, waving it off. "Please, I'm retired." "For real this time?" Tasha teased. "For real," Mom said. Though I noticed she still carried her badge in her bag. Old habits die hard, especially when those habits involve catching criminals disguised as HOA board members. We learned that Eleanor and her two closest allies, Stuart and Diana, had all pled guilty. The court called it one of the most audacious fraud schemes ever hidden behind suburban bylaws. Eleanor had gone from president of Pine Crest Gardens to inmate 4736B faster than you can say mandatory landscaping review. But the rabbit hole didn't stop there. The network Eleanor worked for, the so-called Hearthstone Syndicate, spanned 12 states. Dozens of HOAs had been used as laundering fronts. Hundreds of families had been unknowingly caught in their web. Thanks to Mom's undercover work, and yes, her high-tech asthma puffer, the operation was dismantled, their accounts frozen, their shell companies exposed, their perfect suburban facade shattered. And as for Pine Crest Gardens, the residents voted in a new HOA board, led not by anyone else but Tasha. Their first act of business, abolish aesthetic violation fines. Their second, establish a single, beautifully simple rule. Rule number 1, be kind. Crazy concept, right? The new board even threw a neighborhood block party to celebrate. There were burgers, laughter, and not a single passive-aggressive comment about mailbox colors. For once, everyone was actually happy to be there. I remember standing by the grill, watching Mom chat with neighbors who used to glare at her like she was public enemy number 1. Now they were thanking her, shaking her hand, asking how she pulled it off. "Teamwork," she said with a smile, "and a really smart garden gnome." I choked on my lemonade. "Mom, please don't tell them you used Raymond for surveillance." She winked. "What, you think I'd waste a perfectly good vantage point?" And then she actually gave a small toast, standing on the same patch of grass where Eleanor once screamed about property values. "To community," she said, raising her glass. "To justice, and to never judging anyone by appearances, even if they seem a little too fond of lawn ornaments." Everyone laughed. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, I caught her sitting quietly on the porch, finally relaxed. Her badge glinted faintly in her lap, next to her real inhaler. Not the recording device, just the standard pharmacy kind. "Thinking about going back?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, it's time to let the next generation handle it. I'm officially retired." "Good," I said, because I don't think Pinecrest could survive another round of HOA warfare. She smiled. "Oh, I'm done fighting. Unless someone touches my gnome." Classic Mom. The next morning, headlines splashed across national news. FBI exposes multi-state crime ring hidden in homeowners associations. Eleanor Hoffman sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Agent Catherine Reynolds commended for Operation Hearthstone. And just like that, my mom went from that lady with the asthma and attitude to local legend. But she never bragged, never gloated. She just went back to gardening, this time with fewer rules and way more freedom. But every once in a while, she'd glance at Raymond and whisper, "Mission accomplished." And I swear, sometimes that little gnome winked back. So what did we learn from all this? Maybe it's that behind every petty HOA rule lurks a power trip or a federal investigation. Maybe it's that justice can come disguised as a sweet old lady with a cookie tin and a badge. Or maybe, just maybe, it's that you should never mess with someone's inhaler. Because in Pine Crest Gardens, even the most harmless-looking neighbor might just be HOA's most wanted. If you enjoyed this wild ride, smash that like button like it's an illegal lawn ornament, drop your own HOA horror story in the comments, and subscribe for more true tales of suburban madness, right here on HOA Wars. Remember, in these neighborhoods, the grass isn't always greener. Sometimes it's wiretapped.